Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by the Hard Truth Distilling Company in Brown County, Indiana.
So for the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world. Time!
Three on the way. Oh! It went in! It went in! And Indiana wins the ball game!
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Float game for the win! Ayler's gone. Goodbye. Touchdown, Indy. Woo! IU. America. They got a football team now.
Pretty simple. I win. Google me.
You know that I'm the cream of the crop.
Now, from the Hard Truth Studios, here's Jim Coyle.
Hello and good day to you all here on the Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle. Of course, I am the Coach Shannon Griffith, hosting for Jim today as he is traveling to Puerto Rico for the Indiana basketball exhibition games there coming up this week. Jim will have you all covered there, as well as with the Hoosier.com, bringing you all the different stories in and out of Puerto Rico. Great opportunity for Hoosier basketball to get their opportunity to go out and play some games now and see what they have in terms of their lineup. And these games will be very valuable to get them off to a right start prior to really getting into it in October, preparing for their first season under Coach DeVries. But Jim is on his way there. He may be joining us in some point today, as he does have a pretty lengthy layover in Florida. So if he can find a spot that has decent Wi-Fi and he can jump on and join us, he will be here. And appreciate you and all being with us here today as we kick off Wednesday, hump day, as we like to call it. Hope everyone's day is going well thus far, getting a break from the heat for the most part. That's not to say that we don't have some issues in our atmosphere due to wildfires, I guess, in Canada, as we've had what they call action alerts in terms of breathing, those that have asthma and such, and I would be one of them, thanks to COVID few years ago, and have to be aware of what is out there in the atmosphere. But that has been kind of the rule of thumb here the last couple days. A lot of things going on in the sports world as we start getting into that regular season mode coming up here. The Colts start their preseason games tomorrow against the Baltimore Ravens, as they've been out in Baltimore the last couple of days having some competitive practices against the Ravens, which I think is a unique thing that they do in the NFL. And yesterday, I guess there was a little bit of a fisticuffs between the two teams, which I'm sure always happens when you get two different teams together. But yeah, to Thursday night, the Colts get their first preseason game. Richardson has been announced as the starting QB, and Jones will play, but Anthony's starting tomorrow night. And then I guess their next preseason game, Jones will be the starter to give them both equal opportunity to show their value. And thus far, it's been a pretty good quarterback competition. The other day, both splitting time with the first offense. AR was 10 of 13, and Jones was 14 of 17. Now, the majority of their passes were in the short range, nothing too much down the field. But what you like to see there, even though it's maybe a shorter throw, is consistency and accuracy. And they were able to show that. And that's one of the things that Anthony has a trouble with is, accuracy with, throwing the football, especially in those short to medium routes. So it's good to see that he had a good day with the aspect of getting the ball in and out of his hands. The Mitchell kid second year out of Georgia, then he transferred to Texas. The wide receiver, shaky start to camp, but has really come on of late and has had an impressive couple of days, which is very good for Indianapolis as they need that depth at wide receiver. So it was pretty good to see that there are some bright spots for the Colts heading into tomorrow's game with Baltimore. Still battling some injuries, especially in the secondary. Biggest one, I believe, was Wiley, and the cornerback has some, a knee that he's hobbled on here. Don't know if he'll play tomorrow. But overall, these practices with Baltimore have been a good couple of days for evaluations, because in the NFL, it's every day due to the fact that they're going to have to make some cuts here coming up pretty soon. And the more you get guys on tape competing against other competition, not just your own, it's pretty important to be evaluated in that sense. Today, we're going to have Dylan Sinn join us here shortly from the Journal-Gazette. We'll talk a little bit about Indiana's basketball trip to Puerto Rico, some Indiana football as well, but we will also take advantage of Dylan in the sense that he also covers some other schools in Indiana for the Journal-Gazette, one being Notre Dame. Get his take on the Irish as he's been up there in South Bend for a couple practices or so, and also talk to him a little bit about Purdue and their new setup there with Coach Odom. And Purdue has a pretty tough stretch of games there to start off the season. But we'll get Dylan's take on that. Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Star talking about high school football and basketball. High school football has already kicked off their practice sessions, and for a lot of Indiana schools, today is the first day of school for a lot of different school districts throughout the state, which is hard to believe. It would seem those kids were just getting out of school for the summer break, and they are already heading back to the classroom. I do not get that concept of things when it comes to what they do in that regard as it pertains to putting kids back on or back to school this early. I know that it's based upon number of days and things like that, but back in the day when I went to school, we didn't start until after Labor Day weekend. And I guess if I was king, I would probably institute that rule back into existence, because I think the kids need a little more time to enjoy the summer. It has really gotten shorter over the years as the school day and school year has gotten longer. So high schools and elementary schools all throughout the state, for the better part, are starting today. And a lot of first-timers going to school, as I've seen throughout Facebook and this morning and Instagram, the different families holding the sign up for the kids to tell what day or what year this is for them in school, as they head out the door to catch the bus or whatever. But we'll get to Kyle and talk all that and some Indiana basketball, high school basketball, get some takes on some things. Noah Smith out of Plainfield has announced his commitment. And maybe even talk some Little League World Series action as Brownsburg Little League, who has a history with the Little League World Series, is embarking on their next opportunity because that gets all kicked off and ready to go as well. So we'll get a chance to get those all here and ready to go as we kick off this Wednesday Indiana Sports Beat Radio. And thanks for being along today, as well as all our stations throughout the state, like my home station of 1380 The Fan up in Fort Wayne. Appreciate those listeners up there, or should I say here, as I am a part or close to the Fort Wayne area. We're actually getting geared up for our high school football coverage there at 1380 The Fan. We'll be starting that here in a couple weeks. And also down in Evansville, ESPN The Ref, 97.7. And then, of course, up in the region on 1230 a.m. and 104.7 FM WJOB. Appreciate you all being here, as well as those listeners throughout the state of Indiana. We're going to take our first break here and get ready for Dylan Sinn, as he will join us here shortly. But we'll be back right after this here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio.
Andy Moore Honda is Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer for a reason. Buy a new Honda and get a 3-month break from car payments. That's right, no payments for 90 days. That includes the all-new, all-electric Honda Prologue, and you get it for just 0.9% financing. Or the 2024 Honda Ridgeline Black Edition or the Honda Accord LX, both for just 1.9% financing. Get more to your door from AndyMooreHonda.com, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer and your best place for new and used vehicles. If you're looking for a new home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore from Brick and Ivy Realty. Cheryl Sizemore has over 2 decades of experience, and that could be the difference in getting the home you want in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl at CherylSizemooreSells@gmail.com or 317-701-0838. That's 317-701-0838. Let Cheryl Sizemore sell or find your new home today. Located on 325 acres in beautiful Brown County, Indiana, Hard Truth Distilling Company is the biggest and the best craft distillery around. While Hard Truth is already known for producing internationally awarded whiskeys and spirits like Hard Truth's sour mash bourbons, sweet mash, and hard road ryes, as well as their cinnamon vodka and the always popular toasted coconut rum. Hard Truth Distillery offers so much more. With a full-service restaurant, ATV, and distillery tours, as well as live music, you can spend an entire day at Hard Truth Distillery while making your entire family or group happy. And that's the Hard Truth. Hard Truth products are available across Indiana, as well as many other states. So no matter where you shop, if they don't carry your favorite Hard Truth product, tell them you want the truth, the Hard Truth. Hard Truth Distilling Company encourages you to enjoy all of their products responsibly and to never drink and drive.
Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle. I'm the Coach Shannon Griffith, sitting in for Jim as he is on his way to Puerto Rico to cover Indiana basketball as they get ready for their 3-game exhibition season there in Puerto Rico. I believe their first contest is a matchup against the Puerto Rican national team. And then I know they have 2 contests against a Serbian national team, which will be a really good test in that regard, as that is a pretty good test for Indiana against the Serbian national team. But we get a chance to, I guess we don't get a chance to see Indiana play or hear them play via the radio. No streaming, no TV for these games there in Puerto Rico. So stick right to the Hoosier.com, as they will have you covered with all the coverage of Indiana's basketball trip down to Puerto Rico. And like I said, Jim is on his way. Hopefully he'll join us here a little bit later if he can find a great Wi-Fi connection, of course. And as he has an extensive layover there in Florida. So hopefully he'll be able to join us as well and give us his preview of what's going on there. But remember, the Hoosier.com, get that subscription today. $1 for your first month, 50% off for the rest of the year. I do not know how much longer that is going to go, but you get all the coverage of Indiana athletics there on the Hoosier.com, including On3's coverage and, of course, the new joint venture with Rivals as well from a recruiting standpoint. That is also included in that subscription. Going to bring on Mr. Dylan Sinn now from the Journal-Gazette. Dylan, how you doing, my man?
I'm good, Griff. Thanks for having me on.
Well, like I told you last night, I'm coming in out of the bullpen to be that late inning reliever for Jim as he's headed on to Puerto Rico. I imagine he's going to get reacquainted with the heat, humidity as in Puerto Rico. But last couple of weeks prior to this week, we've been pretty well prepared with that heat index and stuff. But from a football standpoint right now, pretty good weather to go out there and practice in because you don't have too much heat. Now, you like to get some heat because that first game or two usually ends up being pretty darn hot. And you like to get them a little bit more acclimated to that heat aspect prior to the first weeks of games. But right now, it's been a great week in terms of temperature out there. And as we know, and you know, of course, is the Indiana Hoosiers football is all kicked off and running with their practices. We'll come back and talk about that here in a second. But we'll talk a little bit here about this trip to Puerto Rico for Indiana. They play Wednesday, Saturday, and Monday. Two of those games will be against the Serbian national team. Kind of what do you expect out of these 3 games for Indiana? I know, were you able to get to the open practice there in Bloomington that they had?
I was last week, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. What was some of your takeaways from that practice and kind of what you envision this first, couple games of this Puerto Rican trip will entail?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that struck me was that they're doing the same thing that got Darren DeVries the job, right? When Scott Dolson took over, when Scott Dolson introduced him as head coach, he stood up there and said that one of the things that struck him was that he had watched Drake play when IU played in the NCAA tournament a couple of years ago, and Drake was in their pod. And then he watched West Virginia play last year in the Bahamas. And on both occasions, he wasn't really looking for a new coach at the time. He was just kind of looking as a basketball fan. And he thought to himself on both occasions with those teams, man, those guys play really hard. And so that kind of stuck with him as he was going through the coaching search. And so Darren DeVries is a guy who gets his teams to play really hard, regardless of what else they do, what other talent they have, what other systems they run. They are a team that plays very, very hard when Darren DeVries is the coach. And so what we learned from that practice is that it seems that they are on pace to be that kind of team again this year. They are trying to develop that this summer. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to see that in Puerto Rico this week because they first of all, don't have a full complement of players. Nick Dorn and Jason Drake are dealing with some minor injuries, so we'll see whether they are able to be out there. My guess would be no. So that hurts the depth a little bit. And of course, they're still building the identity, right? They're not going to be the same team now that they will be in November, December, January. But that was something that struck me from that practice was how hard they play, how much energy they have. And so I'm looking forward to hearing about that on the court as well. And then just from a basketball perspective, right? It's one of those things where I'm interested to see what they're going to do for a starting lineup, because I do think the starting lineup in Puerto Rico might well be the starting lineup at the beginning of the regular season or pretty close to it. There will still be competition, obviously, in the preseason. There's 6 weeks of practice and all of that, but I think you can come pretty close to getting some practices in, to getting some reps in with your starting five, right? And so I think you can say pretty definitively that Tucker DeVries, Lamar Wilkerson, and Reed Bailey are probably going to start. Right. I think that's pretty set right now. Obviously you can change things around. That seems to be pretty set. Then what do you do in the backcourt is the question to me, right? My guess is Tatum Conaway and Connor Enright probably start together. Those are two of the better passers. They're probably the best passers on the team. They're both very, very good at it. Can they start together? I think they probably can. And they probably will in Puerto Rico, but just a question of, what do we see out of them playing together? Because I'm curious about that. And I'm looking forward to seeing how the rotation shakes out a little bit, because they're going to give guys minutes, obviously. But we'll see a little bit how they envision this roster looking like when they get to actual games going forward.
Yeah. And again, this is a so valuable trip for them, being a new staff with really a completely overhauled ball club, getting the opportunity to watch these guys compete against other competition. And I believe that, Coach DeVries is a guy that demands an intensity and physicality on defense, which I think was shown a little bit in the open session there, as well as movement on offense and, shooting, getting the shot, but really movement. I mean, Jim, I think had said, if you're not paying attention on the floor and you're, doing your positional stuff and your eyes are not on the ball, you may get it in the ear because how quick the ball was moving and such. And I heard a couple of other observations as it came to the physicality of their defense, which they so badly need. If that was one thing that kind of drove me nuts over the Woodson era, was the lack of physicality, intensity on a consistent basis from Indiana. I don't know how you perceive that, but, to me, that was one of the key things that I felt they lacked each and every week on a consistent basis during the season, was that defensive intensity and physicality on the floor. And I'm not talking about throwing guys down or throwing elbows or anything like that, but not, getting in the guy's face on defense and not giving them easy shots, being in a position to contest those. Kind of what's your thoughts on that from that open practice? Did you see some physicality or intensity as a defense?
I did. I think that they will have some of that, and I think that is a really important part of what they're planning on doing. Now, I will say what Coach DeVries said was that the offense is ahead of the defense right now. And I think they have longer to go in becoming the kind of defensive team that they want to be than becoming the kind of offensive team they want to be. They have, I still think it is a work in progress on the defensive end in terms of being in the places where you're supposed to be, right? Not an effort thing, because as we talked about, this team, they play with a lot of effort, but it's more about learning Darren DeVries' system and what he wants them to be doing. There were several times that we saw in practice where it's like, you're supposed to be here and you're here instead, right? And you're not where you're supposed to be because you're still learning, right? That's going to happen when you have 13 new players and they're all trying to get reps in. and all of that. So that's something that I'm looking for, is to see whether you can take strides there, whether being in a game situation really allows you to take some strides in that area. One thing I'm really looking for is defensive rebounding. Darren DeVries has talked about they want to be a really good defensive rebounding team, because if you want to get up and down the floor, right, if you want to be a fast break transition offense, you need to be able to rebound the ball when the other team shoots it, so you can throw outlet passes and get the ball moving up the court, right? They worked a lot on outlet passing in that practice. It was something that was a focus for them. They want to get the ball up the court. To do that, you have to rebound the ball before when the other team misses it, right? And so that is to me a question mark for this team, is do you have guys that are going to do that on a regular basis? And I think that Reed Bailey, he's done a little bit of it at Davidson, but beyond that, it's one of those things where you're going to need everyone to really pitch in, I think, and because they don't have a ton of size outside of Bailey. Sam Alexis is 6'8", 6'9". Trent Sisley is 6'7". Josh Harris is 6'8", but I'm not sure how much he's going to play right away. I think he's more of a longer-term project, although I think I like his physical tools, to be clear. But I do wonder who is going to carry the mail as a rebounder, because they need someone to do it. And I'm not sure if Bailey is quite that guy. We're going to have to see.
Yeah. I think that is going to be another key element to this trip, playing against this, outside competition, to see where maybe there are some shortcomings and how you work around them and coach around them, in terms of what you maybe not have, and how do you take what you have and mold it into something that can compensate maybe for what you lack in size. But in basketball, that's the hardest part. You really can't coach it. Size. So you either have it or you don't. Talking about Trent Sisley, I mean, a lot of expectations, I guess you could say, for the young man. Very good player and such. How do you see him figuring into the equation, as a true freshman? Is he a guy that's going to get some minutes, but minimal, but are they going to find ways to utilize him, more in their rotation? I guess, again, that's another example of having an exhibition game, because you can see how maybe that shapes out. But what is your thoughts on that young man?
Yeah, it's interesting because they have so many guys who have so much experience, right? And they brought in a lot of guys with 3-4 years of college experience who you'd expect to play, who you'd expect to be able to learn a system and get going right away. But I mean, I watched that practice, and I think Trent Sisley is one of their 7 or 8 best players. I think that he is probably going to end up being one of the closer, like, guys. I wouldn't say maybe first off the bench, but in the rotation, I think I would say, because he does so many things well. He rebounds, he defends, he can shoot the heck out of the ball. He's big, he's long, he has athleticism to him. I do think that he is one of their 7 or 8 best players, really, really early in his tenure, which is impressive considering, again, how much experience they do have on this team. And him being the only freshman who we saw at that practice, because the Europeans, Alexa Ristic from Serbia and Andres Asimovic from Bosnia, neither of them were at that practice. They were still getting prepared to come to the United States. So Sisley was the youngest guy there. He absolutely looked like he belonged. And the early reports from what Coach DeVries has said about him are that he is ahead in terms of his learning curve. So I think he's going to have a role on this team. I don't think it's probably going to be as a starter. I don't know, 10, 15 minutes a game at least, and probably growing as the season goes on, he gets more comfortable, because he is a guy who can do so many things. He can plug so many gaps in the rest of your roster, and they might need him as a rebounder at some point this season, because he can do that. I don't know, again, how many guys they have that are really is that's their strong suit. So I expect him to have a role this year. I think he's a darn good player at a career at IU.
Well, we're going to take another break here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Dylan will still be back with us here. When we come back after this break, we'll talk some Indiana football and preseason rankings, all right here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio.
Know a team or group needing a fundraiser? Boost Fundraising raises more money faster and offers the most unique and user-friendly online fundraiser in the nation. Your team receives personalized fundraising pages for each team member. Free team-branded promo gifts shipped to each donor. Boost Fundraising does it all. Sports teams, marching bands, charity causes, and community groups. Go to boostfundraising.com and be sure to enter the promo code COYLE, that's C-O-Y-L-E, to receive a discounted fundraiser. Located on 325 acres in beautiful Brown County, Indiana, Hard Truth Distilling Company is the biggest and the best craft distillery around. While Hard Truth is already known for producing internationally awarded whiskeys and spirits like Hard Truth Sour Mash Bourbons, Sweet Mash, and Hard Road Ryes, as well as their cinnamon vodka and the always popular toasted coconut rum. Hard Truth Distillery offers so much more. With a full-service restaurant, ATV, and distillery tours, as well as live music, you can spend an entire day at Hard Truth Distillery while making your entire family or group happy. And that's the Hard Truth. Hard Truth products are available across Indiana, as well as many other states. So, no matter where you shop, if they don't carry your favorite Hard Truth product, tell them you want the truth, the Hard Truth. Hard Truth Distilling Company encourages you to enjoy all of their products responsibly and to never drink and drive.
Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio alongside Dylan Sinn from the Journal-Gazette. I'm the coach, Shannon Griffith, sitting in for Jim Coyle today as he is flying his way to Puerto Rico. He will hopefully join a little later on today if he can find a good internet connection and kind of give us a report on how the American airline or the United States airline system is working. If we're having any major problems with flights or things of that matter, as we've struggled with that throughout the last 6 months or so, but hopefully he'll give us a report on his flight and how that is going on his way to Puerto Rico to cover Indiana basketball, as well as the guys from the Hoosier.com. So stick right here for all the coverage, as that is a non-broadcast exhibition games there in Puerto Rico. I have no idea why there isn't, radio of some sort or some type of stream, but I would imagine it may have to do with some NCAA rules as it pertains to exhibition games versus regular games. So there is a reason, and it's probably a valid one as to why there is no actual broadcast of the exhibition season. Indiana football kind of in full swing now. Practice yesterday in the stadium for the first time. And I know that you were there for one of the practices early on. Before we jump into that, the coaches poll has been out here for a couple days. Indiana at right now was ranked 19th in the country, and not too bad, I guess you could say, for a team that has never seen a top 25 rating this high, probably in a long, long time, if any, in that regard. The one school that I thought was funny because of the distance between them is they had Illinois ranked number 12 in this poll, which I thought was kind of, I don't know, a little higher than I would have thought compared to the spread with Indiana. But that came out. Any takes on the poll from your perspective? Because I know you have been a voter in the AP poll, Dylan?
That's correct. Yeah, I am a voter in the AP poll this year. I put in my preseason ballot a couple of days ago. They'll have that here coming up in a couple of days as well. But I mean, my take on it was I think Indiana. That's about right. I think that they have to prove that they're as good as they were last year. They lost a lot of talent from that team. They replaced it in the transfer portal, but now you got to go out there and win games with those new players. So I think that 19th is about right. I don't really have any objections to them being below Illinois. Illinois returns a lot. They returned 16 starters from a team that went 10-3. They were very, very good last year. I think they're going to be very, very good. So I do think that I think that's about right. And so they'll have a chance to, like, if you are an Indiana person and you think, well, it's ridiculous that Illinois is that far ahead of us or whatever, you're going to have a chance to prove it in week 4, right? Like we're going to see it on the field. Yeah. It's going to be at Memorial Stadium. Indiana, both teams are probably going to be undefeated at that point based on the schedules prior to that. So you're going to have a chance to prove it on the field. And the rankings after that will kind of bear out. As always, the preseason rankings are especially in the transfer portal era, are just basically educated guesswork. It's kind of like, all right, this is what we think this team is going to be. Florida State last year was ranked 10th going into the season. I don't even think necessarily that was totally ridiculous for Florida State to be ranked 10th going into the season, because they had a lot of high-profile transfers that people really liked. It looked like they had a lot of talent. And then they didn't, and then they were terrible. And so it's in the transfer portal era, you just don't really know how these teams are going to fit together with so much roster churn every single season. And so you're just doing the best you can. I think that 19th is pretty reasonable for Indiana. And what struck me was you have Oregon, Penn State, Illinois, all in the top 12. Those are 3 top 12 teams that Indiana has on its schedule this season. And so all of the complaints about, oh, Indiana doesn't play anyone in the non-conference, who cares? That's the whole point of being in the Big Ten. That's again, if you're an SEC person, why does Indiana play no one in the non-conference? Because they're playing 3 top 12 teams during their Big Ten schedule, which is going to happen most years in the Big Ten, because that's just the way the conference is now. Sorry. Like there's no the way the current structure is set up, there is no reason to play anyone out of conference, because you are going to play in the Big Ten specifically. You are going to play plenty of good teams that if you beat enough of them in your conference, you're going to be a playoff team. So all the stuff about Indiana's non-conference schedule to me continues to be ridiculous. It is going to be ridiculous, and the preseason rankings are another indicator in that direction.
Yeah, I took. There were some comments yesterday. Of course, Paul Feinbaum and his opinion, which I think everybody knows is a very bloated opinion about everything the SEC is or isn't. Kind of took I guess take some shots at Cignetti for his comments during the Big Ten Media Day. And the fact of the matter is, they want to try to think that the SEC is doing themselves some type of big favor by playing their 4th non-conference game against teams from the ACC or the Big 12, or in some cases the Big 10, and wanting to make that look as if that's their 9th game or their 9th conference game, on top of it showing it's against a better talent pool than whatever. But they make their own point. They make Cignetti's point. If you play 9 conference games, you still have the 3 non-conference games that everybody's going to schedule, which are going to be probably 2 G5 teams and an FCS level team. And the SEC has done that for years. I don't know how many times in week 8 or 9 I've turned on the TV to see Alabama playing Furman in week 9. And what value does that give anyone? You know what I mean? In terms of how does that look, for their fans and stuff. So I don't buy this debate on schedule. I don't buy it because it's a dead horse from 2024, which is already over, and them complaining about them dropping Virginia or Louisville and some other schools. Hey, I get it and understand where they're coming from, playing 9 conference games. They want to protect the fact that they've got 9 conference games. And therefore, if they played another P4 school, that essentially would make them play almost like a 10-game non-conference season. So I'm over it. I'm done with it. I think the polls early on, or like you said, is a little bit of a barometer of where people may think they rank, but the reality of it is nobody knows. outside of the ones that you always know with, like you pointed out, Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, big branded names that are going to be there each and every year. So we move on from all of that, but, talk about your, being there for your practice. And I know that may have been a week ago or so, and they were running around in just helmets and underwear. What was kind of the vibe you got from this new ball club and, with the transfers, that meshing with the new group and so forth and so on?
Yeah, I mean, it is, they seem excited, right? Like they're cursing that he kind of struck that tone at the beginning of camp was like, we have not earned anything. We have not done anything yet. Like we are looking forward, and everything backward is past. Right. We're not going to be thinking about that. We are not going to be talking about last season. This is this season. It's this team's chance to write its own story. And that was kind of the emphasis from day one. I also thought it was interesting that the practice that I went to, he talked about, I've already talked to them about Old Dominion in week one. Those Sunbelt teams can come up and get you. He obviously knows Old Dominion as a team from his conference when he was at JMU. So I thought it was interesting that they're already doing some week one, getting a chip on your shoulder, getting some prep ready for that. So I thought that was interesting. But generally the vibe of practice is, of course, I went to the first practice. It was as good as it can be. Everyone's excited to be out there, that kind of thing. And so the team looks good. Like I obviously we didn't see any kind of like 11 on 11. And I think that's going to be, the trenches are going to be where this team is going to be defined. How good are you on the offensive and defensive lines? They brought in some really talented players on both of those, in both of those areas, but it's a question of how well they gel. And so we didn't get to see any of that at that practice, but I mean, the skill position players look good. Fernando Mendoza is, as advertised, he's got a really strong arm. My biggest takeaway from the practice that I saw was I think EJ Williams is going to be a big piece of this team if he can stay healthy. Obviously, that's a big if. He's had some injury issues in his career. But if he is healthy, I think that the combination of Elijah Surratt, Omar Cooper Jr., and EJ Williams is one of the best wide receiver trios in the Big Ten. It's right up there with just about anyone other than Ohio State, right? And so those three, I think, are really, really talented, and they'll give Mendoza places to throw the ball. And I'm really excited to see that kind of group really gel together as the season goes on and become the type of weapons the Indiana is going to need to push the ball down the field.
Yeah, and then you had the Cal transfer, Boyd, who was with Mendoza. He's another element to that wide receiver room. No question, they've got what they need on paper on both sides of the ball. I think their offensive line is shaping up to be a true Big Ten offensive line. And what Bob Bostad has done for 2 years with maybe one hand tied behind his back, now has some talented guys up front that be interesting to see that dynamic. And then on the defensive side of the ball, we'll see who replaces Walker at linebacker, but their secondary, I think, is going to be one of the tops in the Big Ten. And I think they're going to be just fine at the defensive line, in my opinion, with what they've brought in. So everything in the black and white looks good, but until you get between the white lines and the ball goes up in the air as the first kick of the season gets underway, we will not know as it pertains to IU and what they look like this year. And I think you mentioned it already. Week 4 is going to be a tough test, but they followed that up with 2 other games that I think will ultimately define where we're going to be at when it comes to the 2025 season. Before I let you go here, let's talk a little bit about Notre Dame, a team that Indiana faced in the college football playoffs a year ago. I know that you covered them for the Journal-Gazette as well as Purdue, but we may not have time to get to Purdue today, but Notre Dame, I know there's a battle for QB1 up there. What's your thoughts there? I think, in my opinion, it's CJ Carr, but the junior Kenny, is it Minchie is the other one that is competing there. What do you see out of that battle?
Yeah, I mean, I think the number one thing to know about that is that it is indeed a battle, right? Like there are some quarterback battles where it's like one guy is just like, you're just waiting to anoint one of the guys, right? Like we all know where this is going. I don't think this is that. I think Carr is probably the favorite, but I don't think it's any kind of certainty. Kenny Minchie, like the thing to know about it is Kenny Minchie is an extremely talented player.
Absolutely.
He can move with the ball, but more than that, he has a ton of arm talent. The ball, you talk about if you're a baseball scout, you talk about the ball jumping off someone's bat, right? The ball jumps out of Kenny Minchie's hand. And so I think that he absolutely has the physical tools to be Notre Dame's quarterback. It's just a question of the consistency and performance and that's what Marcus Freeman has talked about is, can you do this day in, day out, and lead this team for 12 weeks as they try to go back to the college football playoff. And whoever proves in camp that they are best equipped to do that is going to be the quarterback. And so right now, I think Kenny Minchie and CJ Carr are both vying for that spot. And I don't think anyone really has that big of a lead at this point. So we'll have to see. I think both of them are good players. I also think that the way this team is set up, it's going to rely more on the run game this year. Jeremiah Love is the best player on the team. He's one of the best players all of college football. And they are going to rely on him a lot to move the offense down the field. Now, obviously, the quarterback has to do his part to make sure that the defense is not loading the box with 8 or 9 guys every snap, and they won't. But I think Jeremiah Love is going to be the focal point of the offense, as he should, because he is the best player out there and one of the most difficult to stop weapons in college football.
Yeah, to me, I believe Love will probably be a Heisman Trophy candidate as the year goes on. I mean, he is a talented kid that's got speed, and he's big and strong. He just signed an NIL deal with New Balance, so he's probably getting pretty good pay for that up there in South Bend. But up front, their offensive line, how is that looking or shaping up? I thought they lost, outside of Coogan, who's now with Indiana.
Yeah.
I think they lost some other big guys up along front, but I may be mistaken on that assumption.
No, you're correct. They had a bunch of guys. They had a couple injuries on the line last year. And basically what happened was they had injuries on the line last year. And then the guys that stepped up in place of those injured players played really well. Pat Coogan was one of those where he stepped in at center for Ashton Craig. But the problem is that some of those guys who got hurt are now back. And so the guys who replaced them were probably not going to start. And so they transferred out, right? Sam Pendleton transferred to Tennessee. Rocco Spindler transferred to Nebraska. Those guys were super, super solid for them last year. And that just shows you the depth that they had on the line, where guys who transferred and are going to start at Tennessee and Nebraska probably were not going to start at Notre Dame. Now, so they had a 5-man offensive line they thought they were pretty set with, that they thought was going to be pretty darn good. Then came July, where they had their one of their projected starting guards, Charles Jagasaw, who was hurt all of last season until the college football playoff. He came in, was very, very good in the playoff. He broke his arm in a all-terrain vehicle accident, and so he is out to start the season. It's unclear when he's going to be back. Freeman says he will be back this year at some point, but he is going to be out to start the season. So then you bring in Sullivan Absher, who is a guy who has played for them. I believe he is a redshirt sophomore. He's never started before, but they like what he has. They like that they believe he can step up for them. So then the question is, how does he fit in with the wider offensive line? Because they thought the offensive line was going to be one of the strengths, if not the strength of the team this year, blocking for Jeremiah Love. Is that still going to be the case with Jagasaw out? I think it can be. I think they have great depth at those positions, but it certainly took a hit with that injury. So how can you kind of reconstitute yourself, and does that kind of affect your performance early in the season when a player that was supposed to start for you goes down so late in the process of getting ready? So we'll have to see. Like Indiana, they have one of the best in the business as the offensive line coach. Joe Rudolph is terrific. And so I think he will have them ready to go, but obviously the Jagasaw injury does throw a wrench into things.
Yeah. And then, of course, they lost Al Golden to the Bengals, and new defensive coordinators, Chris Ash, who's a veteran and probably a pretty good pickup for Notre Dame at that spot. Don't look for them to change that much from the defense they had a year ago, which was very good, very good.
Yeah.
The thing that stuck out to me, and got you here for a couple more seconds or so, but this year's Notre Dame schedule is no joke. and it comes to looking at them. And I've always been critical of Notre Dame's schedule because I've always felt that it never measured up to what a true conference schedule would look like if they were in a conference. But they play Miami week 1 at Miami, come back and play Texas week 2.
Texas A&M.
Texas A&M. I'm sorry. Yeah. Texas A&M week 2, Purdue week 3, Arkansas week 4. And then week 5, they play Boise State. Now, that 3-game stretch, Purdue, Arkansas, and Boise State, some may argue not the toughest, but again, you know, after coming off Miami and Texas A&M as your first 2, a lot of things can happen in those first 2 ball games that leaves you in those 3 stretch games that in a hole maybe. Then they come back with NC State, USC, Boston College, then week 9 Navy, then Pitt, Syracuse, and Stanford. Again, I'm not saying it's a overly difficult or tough schedule, but coming out of the gates playing Miami and Texas A&M week 1 and 2, that may define their season right there, because a 2-loss Notre Dame team may not be in the college football playoff discussion at the end of the season with 2 losses. And they're ranked, 7th in the country in the coaches poll, if I'm not mistaken?
5th, actually.
Okay. Talk about that a little second. I'll let you go here about the schedule for Notre Dame this year.
Yeah, I do think you're absolutely right that those first 2 games are going to define the season. If they are 2-0 coming out of that, I think they'll probably be ranked in the top 3 in the country, and they'll probably they have a very good chance of ending the season undefeated. If they're 1-1, they're probably going to have to run the table in order to make the playoff. And if they're 0-2, then something has gone seriously wrong, because I do think they're a better team than both of those 2 teams. But if they're 0-2, then it's almost like, well, I don't even know if running the table and winning 10 in a row would get them in. They because the schedule gets a little bit lighter. It would depend on whether any of those other teams really steps up and becomes a very good team down the stretch of the season. So I'm interested. Those first 2 weeks are going to be terrific. That opening game in Miami is on a Sunday. It's the Sunday after opening Saturday. So it should be a lot of fun, especially with Carson Beck, quarterback for Miami. He didn't get to play against Notre Dame when he was at Georgia in the playoff last year because he was hurt. So that's a nice storyline as well. Looking forward to that.
Dylan, I appreciate you joining us here today and giving us your knowledge, and vast knowledge, I should say, of not only Indiana basketball and football, but throwing a little Notre Dame into the equation. So you have a great rest of the week, and we'll catch you again here on the Sports Beat Radio.
Absolutely, Griff. Thanks for having me on, as always.
Yeah. Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette. We're going to step aside, take another break here on the Indiana Sports Beat Radio. On the other side, we'll be waiting for Kyle Neddenriep to come and talk to us about some high school sports action underway in Indiana, all right here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio.
If you're looking for a new home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore from Brick and Ivy Realty. Cheryl Sizemore has over 2 decades of experience, and that could be the difference in getting the home you want in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl at CherylSizemore@gmail.com or 317-701-0838. That's 317-701-0838. Let Cheryl Sizemore sell or find your new home today. Located on 325 acres in beautiful Brown County, Indiana, Hard Truth Distilling Company is the biggest and the best craft distillery around. While Hard Truth is already known for producing internationally awarded whiskeys and spirits like Hard Truth's sour mash bourbons, sweet mash, and hard road ryes, as well as their cinnamon vodka and the always popular toasted coconut rum. Hard Truth Distillery offers so much more. With a full-service restaurant, ATV, and distillery tours, as well as live music, you can spend an entire day at Hard Truth Distillery while making your entire family or group happy. And that's the Hard Truth. Hard Truth products are available across Indiana, as well as many other states. So no matter where you shop, if they don't carry your favorite Hard Truth product, tell them you want the truth, the Hard Truth. Hard Truth Distilling Company encourages you to enjoy all of their products responsibly and to never drink and drive. When it comes to apparel and promotions, Freethink has you covered, literally, whether it's 24 or 200 shirts for sports leagues, businesses, or groups. Freethink Apparel and Promotions can also create your very own merchandising store. Freethink Apparel and Promotions did it for Indiana Sports Beat Radio, and they can do it for you. Whether it's screen printing, embroidery, digital printing, promotional products, vehicle wraps, or anything else under the promotional line. See what Freethink Apparel and Promotions can do for you at freethinkapparel.com.
Welcome back to the Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle. Of course, I am the Coach Shannon Griffith, or Coach Griff is usually how I'm referred to. Sitting in for Jim as he's on his way to Puerto Rico. Hopefully he'll get a chance to join us here in this second half of the show, and hopefully his scheduled flights are all on time and as smooth as you could hope for flying in today. But appreciate Dylan Sinn joining us there a little bit ago, talking about Notre Dame as well. And I know there was some questions about Notre Dame's ranking, and I think he cleared it up. I think I've seen him as high, he said, as fifth in the country. I've seen him at 7, I believe. And so they are ranked this year, and deservingly so. Notre Dame coming off that runner-up finish last year, but a tremendous year there. Unfortunately for Indiana, they weren't able to get past them in the college football playoffs. But it'll be an interesting start of the season for Notre Dame, like we said, with Miami and Texas A&M week 1 and 2 before their schedule lightens up a little bit for the rest of the year. But, you know, they still have that, you know, USC in week 7, which will always be a tough ball game. Last year, USC really should have beaten Notre Dame. They had 2 passes intercepted on like the 2-yard line, getting ready to go in and score and take the lead decisively in that game. And Notre Dame returned them both for touchdowns. And so that's a game there that could have very easily gone against Notre Dame. And USC for Coach Riley this year is probably a situation where he needs to win in that regard. So we shall see. Yeah, Russell, that's what I had saw your comment earlier and wanted to get that cleared up so everybody was aware of their ranking. So hopefully that came through for you in that regard. But Notre Dame, lost Golden last year or this year to the Bengals. Chris Ash, the veteran defensive coordinator, has stepped in. And then, of course, the big storyline out of South Bend thus far is who is QB1. And that will be a topic for the rest of camp. And we'll see who ends up being that. I do believe it'll be Carr. That would be my guess. Very well, very good type of player there. So that is that on Notre Dame. And let's get Kyle Neddenriep in here quick. Kyle, welcome to the show. Glad to see you here on a bright and sunny Wednesday, hump day. And it's not too hot out there, as it over the last few weeks, everybody was avoiding the outside with the 110 heat index. But I know that you're in full swing right now with high school sports, both football and basketball. I mean, that's mostly year round now in the state of Indiana. But you had a couple articles out this week. I saw one was the 8 questions ahead of 2025. I thought that was a interesting take on some things. But first wanted to discuss or talk about, and this is something that in our conversation that I had not even thought of in terms of the Carmel High School's new boys head football coach. Kevin Wright is back at Carmel. Of course, Kevin has a storied career in high school football in Indiana, son of Bud Wright, and Kevin has coached at some college levels as well, most recently on Tom Allen's staff at Indiana. But he's coming all the way back up from IMG Academy there in Florida, which, you know, the athletes he got to coach there were probably pretty nice walking in every day when you had a team like they had. I think he only lost 2 games total in his time there. But talk a little bit about Kevin's journey back to Carmel and kind of what brought him back.
Yeah, so he left, you know, it would have been 11 years ago, his first go-around at Carmel, had a 5-year run there, won one state championship, went to 2 other games that they could have easily won 3 during that time, lost a couple close ones in the state championship game, but then went to IMG Academy, obviously kind of got that program off the ground. You know, they were obviously building. And then he came in and, you know, we all know what IMG Academy is. They had already been good in other sports, but kind of building that football program, you know, then went on to IU with, like you said, with Tom Allen. But, you know, last year, you know, was his first year kind of away from, you know, coaching basically being on a college staff or a head high school coach for a long time. He helped out his dad, Bud Wright, at Sheridan last year, and said he, you know, sort of got back to, like, you know, the small school, small town, obviously, and kind of got back to, you know, this is why we do it type of thinking, and, you know, getting to know those kids, and, you know, wanted to get back into coaching. Obviously, Carmel has not, you know, they kind of struggled here these last couple of years. 3-7 last year was their only losing season since the 70s. It was in 97. They had one sort of slip up year. And then, you know, but this 2-year run, they were 3-7 last year, 5-5 the year before. So they've kind of been non-Carmel like these last couple of years, and injuries played a factor in that. And I think very highly of their previous coach, John Hebert, who's now at Noblesville. But, you know, they had an opening there. Kevin, you know, if he's interested, you're going to hire Kevin Wright. I mean, he knows how to win championships. He's, you know, very detail oriented. You know, I went out to practice Monday, you know, their first official practice, and, you know, he's on top of everything, you know, like a good coach would be. You know, but at Carmel, you can sort of, you know, there's a large staff there. You know, he's got assistants he trusts, and, you know, we talked about him being a little bit different coach, you know, maybe in some ways than he was before, but also has that same fire and energy. I think that's going to, you know, pay off. You know, I don't know if this year they'll be, you know, he doesn't, that's kind of interesting thing too, is, you know, he's kind of like, I don't know how good we are, you know, we're going to find out, you know, early in the season. But it's hard to gauge, you know, going, you know, you're doing some scrimmages and things like that, but you're not going to really know until that first week of the season. So, you know what, I think it's one of the most interesting storylines of the season is Kevin Wright coming back to coach high school football, which I always thought when he left for IMG, I thought he would be back at some point. I didn't know where or when, but Kevin's you know, it's sort of funny how Bud stayed at Sheridan for like 60 years. And Kevin sort of, you know, he's kind of 5 years one place, you know, he kind of bounces a little bit to different places. So that's kind of funny to me, just the father-son differences there. But I think he's going to be, you know, Carmel's got the, you know, no one's counting them as an underdog or anything. You know, they're legit, you know, numbers wise, he said it's about where it was when he left as far as players out. So none of that's fallen off. They're doing some renovations at the stadium that will make it, it's already one of the better stadiums in the state, but it'll be very top notch by the time that's done. That'll be probably a year from now, but man, it's very interesting. And they've got some very talented seniors too that are hungry, and, you know, it'll be fun to see. They play Fishers right off the bat, then they play Westfield the second week. So you'll find out pretty quickly just how good Carmel can be this year.
Yeah, their quarterback I saw has already committed to Troy, which is kind of an ironic commitment in the sense that you don't see too much of Troy University coming up into Indiana. But their quarterback at Carmel has had pretty good couple years there. And, you know, with Kevin being there now, he's only going to get better in terms of his ability on the field. And like you said, Kevin, you know, was the, you know, the rise of Warren Central
Yeah.
was, due to him back in the day. And so he has won about every place he's been, and coming from, like you said, Bud Wright and his legacy, he's kind of continued that winning ways from his dad's point, part of the equation. And I thought it was interesting too, when I think last year he said he was helping Bud up at last year. And he was talking about how the small schools, you got both kids going both ways, and, the luxuries that Carmel has where they can platoon. You don't necessarily have it at the lower levels. You've got to play guys both ways. And I think he found that, an appreciation for that type of football and what it requires at the lower levels. But his background and his coaching career has been pretty extensive. And like I said, he was the OC at Western Kentucky at one point. He actually beat me out for that job.
Is that right?
Darn him. Well, David Ellison, who was the head coach at Western Kentucky at the time, Indiana guy, Butler grad. And, of course, we all had a relationship with David. So, but yeah, he hired Kevin and understood that as well. But good to see Kevin back in Indiana at Carmel. And when you said that in your article about Carmel 3-7 being the first losing season in forever, I mean, I was really surprised at that. That's a pretty good run of winning football. And I saw them a couple of years ago up here. I had their game against Homestead, in which they came out actually out of, from behind to win that game, if I'm not mistaken. But it's good to see Kevin back in Indiana, and glad that John is over at Noblesville. He'll do a great job there as well. In your, I know you're doing extensively background stories and, the different conferences and stuff. You talked a little bit about 6A and the contenders in Central Indiana. It's a pretty loaded group of 6A schools there. When you talk about high school football name recognition, what are some of the things that you're expecting out of that group there in Indy when it comes to the 6A level?
Well, I think and we may have talked about this before, but I think you start with Brownsburg, defending champs. You always sort of give them the floor, I would say, and kind of give them the benefit of the doubt. And John Hart, you talk about high school coaches in the state. We're really lucky to have such great coaches at especially the 6A level around here. I mean, you talk about John Hart, Kevin Wright, we just talked about, Eric Moore, obviously. Mike Kirshner stepped down last year, but just a lot of guys who've been doing it for a long time. Jason West at Franklin Central, who's won state championships in multiple schools. So, but yeah, John Hart, I mean, I think they're going to be, offensively very dynamic. They have 10 starters back, including the quarterback. Their top 2 receivers. They have 3 really good running backs and a pretty experienced offensive line. So they're going to put the points up. The question for them will be defense. They lost a lot on that side of the ball. In fact, only I think 2 guys who started full time last year, but they do have a lot of talent behind those guys who will be stepping into those roles. So I think you start there. But to me, the more I look at it, the Center Grove team. That was 8-5 last year, and they're playing sort of a weird schedule, getting out of the MIC, and then a lot of teams just don't want to play them in the season. So they've played some tougher teams from out of the state, so that record might be a little misleading. But I do really like their returning team. I think they're going to be more physical and run the ball and stop the run maybe better than they did last year. And also they have this young quarterback, Oscar Sloan, who's a sophomore. Who's getting a lot of D1 attention already. So, he's not proven at the varsity level just yet, but very highly touted. So I'm actually going down there today for a little bit. So excited to see them and what they've got. So I think they're going to be a factor for sure. Those teams actually played in the semi-state last year, Brownsburg and Center Grove.
Yeah.
And Brownsburg won a very close game that Center Grove actually was throwing into the end zone with the chance to win. And, Brownsburg pressured the quarterback, needed to get rid of it early, or they might have been playing for state title. So That's how close it is with some of these 6A teams. There's a lot. I would, Westfield's got to be included in that conversation. Coming from the north side of the bracket, it's a little bit, it's not as maybe easy of a path as it used to be in the north. I think it's becoming more balanced north and south than it was with, you see, teams like Crown Point getting better and better.
Mm-hmm.
Fort Wayne Carroll had a really good run a couple of years ago. They've been more solid from the north, and then the north, just having Carmel, HSC, and Fisher's all in the same group with Westfield too, coming from the north. Those are all, really good teams year in and year out. So I think it's becoming a little bit more balanced north to south, but there's a lot of, 6A is always so fun. I look forward to it every year just because there's so many teams that are, sort of within the same conversation with each other. So, but yeah, still some of the old guard, the Warrens, the Ben Davises will have a say. I think Pike's a lot better than they've been in the past. So I think they'll be a team on the rise, and also Avon, which has kind of been building up here the last few years as well.
Yeah. And 6A has always been one of those levels that you get a lot of parity in terms of skill level, I guess you could say, a lot more of that as well. And then on top of it, you get some pretty good quarterbacks in that group as well, as then you kind of mentioned a few there. And, I hadn't forgot, but you reminded me again, Center Grove and Carmel are not in any conference. Is that correct?
That's right. They're independents. They are, the schedules for a while there. It really got dramatic as far as there were some bad feelings. Between the MIC and those two schools. And, basically they were thrown out of the league.
And for winning.
And they were trying to get in the HCC, and there was meetings, and they were applying for a membership in the HCC. And I think probably, put the cart before the horse a little bit with that. And then they weren't voted in, and the MIC said, we're getting rid of you. So there's some hard feelings, but I think some of the feelings have been smoothed over. It's sort of a, it's sort of a marriage of convenience a little bit, because they need teams to play. The 6A teams need each other a little bit, because there aren't real, the 5A teams don't want to play you, and anybody below it's not really purposeful to play those type of schools that are way smaller than you. So they sort of need each other. And we're seeing some of those games come back on the schedule. Like Carmel and Center Grove haven't played here recently. They're playing again starting next year, which is good. There were some hard feelings between those schools too. But I think that game being back on the schedule will be great for high school football. That's the old Copper Kettle game that for years was probably the best, most looked forward to game on the schedule year in and year out. So those games are starting to come back a little bit more, which is good, I think. And I think we'll see at some point, who knows what happens. A lot of it's based on sort of the geography of the schools and how schools are demographically changing and getting bigger and smaller. And I think we'll see some more changes. Conferences are always kind of fluid to a certain extent, but I think we'll see for football, you sort of need a conference just for scheduling. It just makes it so much easier to do so. But yeah, I think we'll see some of those relationships, getting better as the years go by, hopefully.
Yeah, I know that they were having some crazy travel too, because of having to go places to just get games over the last couple of years. Made it very stressful for the AD as well as the coaches there. Jump over to basketball here real quick before you let you go. But Noah Smith out of Plainfield made a commitment to DePaul. What went into that decision-making process for him? He's a very good ball player. But what kind of went in that decision-making process from your point of view?
Well, it's interesting to me. I was out covering him in June, and he talked to Jack Owens a little bit too, who's the DePaul assistant there and had been at Purdue obviously for a long time and coached at Miami of Ohio. So he's been around, but I know they felt good about Noah, and Noah set up an official visit there, actually committed just after that, publicly after that visit, official visit to DePaul. Chris Holtman coaches there. I think that's a big part of it. He's coached at Butler and Ohio State and did a good job in his first year, kind of making them a viable again. DePaul's been so bad, struggled really a lot here in the last several years. So they won 14 games last year, but Noah, I know there was some talk about Purdue being involved with him, and I know that they were recruiting him, didn't offer him eventually, didn't get to that point, but I know he was on their radar. I thought that might happen. And if they got involved, who knows what could have happened there. But I think it's his commitment is sort of I think, sort of a sign of the times a little bit. I think he's a guy who would have had a lot of high major offers, 5-6 years ago, but because of the portal, things have changed slightly.
Absolutely.
He's a top 75 kid in the country. So good for DePaul. They invested in him, and they're going to get a really good player, I think, who I think is going to have a really good college career.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, how the portal has changed things both in the football world, but even more so probably in the basketball world, just because of the sheer numbers of the situation. So, we saw Coach DeVries basically rebuild an Indiana team from ground up because of, coaches changes and things of that nature. So, but yeah, I thought that was an interesting commitment there to go to DePaul. But, nowadays with the NIL and stuff, sometimes it comes down to that as well. One last thing that I saw in one of your articles I was reading through was former Southport head coach Bill Springer has passed away last week, I believe, was 90 years old. Talk about Bill's legacy there at Southport for the most part, but just in high school basketball alone in Indiana.
Yeah, Bill was, if you got to know him over the years, just a super guy. He attended a lot of Southport games. For years, he was helping out Chris May with the Hall of Fame. And I don't know how recently he's been doing that, but, as of like 5-6 years ago, he's helping out Chris, going to games all over the state, watching teams, who might make the Hall of Fame Classic and just like high school basketball a lot. It was cool when Southport got really good again about 9, 10, 11 years ago with Kyle Simpson as coach there. He came back into the fold, and he was there kind of, living and dying with every Southport game. And they were, they made a pretty good run. Thought a couple times there they might have had a chance to go all the way, but, didn't quite do it. But, he's a name that, he'd been at Southport. I think his last year coaching was 99, but he'd always kind of been around the program even since then. And, Southport's got a, strong alumni base, and, everybody knew Bill Springer, Coach Springer. And, it's fun to hear, how, someone was telling me, like, his grandson actually told me that, every time he was with him, they would, you could count on people coming up to him and calling him Coach Springer and, telling stories about what they remembered from his coaching career. So, but yeah, just a super guy. It was sad to see his wife had passed away a few years ago, and I know that took a toll on him. But yeah, just a good guy. Grew up in Indianapolis, Washington. In the 50s, he played there, and obviously went on and coached for about 40 years. So yeah, really good coach and just a good human being.
Well, I know he had a huge impact in that area, but basketball as a whole in Indiana. But he led a great life, 90 years old. I think if we all could get there, we'd take it. But sad to see that. But also, his legacy will live on throughout the state of Indiana basketball, but there in Southport. So, Kyle, appreciate you coming on and being with us here today. Wish you a great rest of the week as you start gearing up more and more for high school football hitting here in a couple weeks.
We're getting there. Looking forward to it, and appreciate you having me on, Shannon.
You bet, buddy. Well, we're going to step aside, take another break here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about Indiana football and a look at some of the practice clips from the last week and some discussion from the players, all right here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio.
Located on 325 acres in beautiful Brown County, Indiana, Hard Truth Distilling Company is the biggest and the best craft distillery around. While Hard Truth is already known for producing internationally awarded whiskeys and spirits like Hard Truth's sour mash bourbons, sweet mash, and hard road ryes, as well as their cinnamon vodka and the always popular toasted coconut rum. Hard Truth Distillery offers so much more. With a full-service restaurant, ATV, and distillery tours, as well as live music, you can spend an entire day at Hard Truth Distillery while making your entire family or group happy. And that's the Hard Truth. Hard Truth products are available across Indiana, as well as many other states. So no matter where you shop, if they don't carry your favorite Hard Truth product, tell them you want the truth, the Hard Truth. Hard Truth Distilling Company encourages you to enjoy all of their products responsibly and to never drink and drive. Hello, everyone. Jim Coyle with Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Thank you, as always, for listening to our content. But for more in-depth coverage on the Indiana Hoosiers football, basketball, and recruiting news, go to thehoosier.com on 3. Now with On 3 and great national writers like Ari Wasserman, Andy Staples, and Steve Wiltfong for football. Pete Nakos, J.B. Shaw, and Joe Tipton's constantly breaking stories on the basketball side. And the local coverage from Alec Lasley, Kyler Staley, and Zach Browning. You can catch something new every day at thehoosier.com. Go there. Sign up today.
Welcome back to the Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle. I'm the Coach Shannon Griffith. Thank you all for being a part of this Wednesday broadcast here. And lo and behold, he has arrived, and it looks like he is found a spot. They've been asking for you, Jim, and grabbing a little OJ. But how was that first leg of your journey thus far?
Early. Very, very early.
Yeah,
I didn't even go to bed. That was not. I had to do so much yesterday that going to bed ended up being the last thought on my mind. But I don't know. Do you remember me? I'm not a big bettor. I've never made big bets, but I made the biggest bet I've ever made, which was $1,000 last year on the over/under for Indiana football. The biggest mistake I made was not betting everything I own on that, because that was a bunny, that was a layup, that was a gimme, and it's driven me crazy ever since. But that ticket was good for 1 year from purchase. It was purchased on August 6th, 2024. Do you know what today's date is?
August 6th.
When did that have to be in?
Well, probably by today, right?
No, by yesterday.
Uh-oh.
No. Got there with 2 hours to spare, my friend.
Okay. Gotcha.
2 hours to spare.
I was going to say, if you would have missed that opportunity, we may not be talking to you right now.
No, you would not be. I would be in the back beating some butt, and it would be my own. So
nice little bit of pocket change for your trip to Puerto Rico. But
but half of it was mine already, so there's that. And you had to wait a year to get it. That was the dumbest bet I've ever made, except because I just didn't make it a gigantic bet. Those gimmies like that, they don't come along very often. And that was a layup, man. I mean, a layup. And I don't know what the hell I was thinking. But
betting Indiana for about the first half of the season was kind of a bunny in terms of a lot of those games, especially Nebraska and Washington, those type of games. And because even I think all the way up through Michigan, they may have been underdogs in the vast majority of the games they played. So it was some bunnies there too for the weekend better, I guess you could say.
Yeah, well, we'll see how they start out this year. They've got, obviously, we've talked about the schedule is going to be extraordinarily stiff. The first 3 games after the non-con games, we've gone over that ad nauseum. So we'll just get to that. Yeah. We'll talk about that when we get to it. But yeah, But we're heading to Puerto Rico, to San Juan, for Indiana basketball as they hit the hardwood tonight. They will be in action tonight in their first game as a team. And it's going to be interesting to see how this team performs, how they perform together, how they play, how they play defensively. Like I said, I'm very curious to see some Mofongo. I kind of almost have some Mofongo going on here, man. That's a Philly cheesesteak burrito sorts. Is about as good as you can get in the airport. So I got that going for me, which is nice.
Where are you at, Orlando or Miami?
Yeah, Fort Lauderdale.
Fort Lauderdale. Okay, so not too far flight after that. So
I think I'm up. I think it's like half. I'm halfway. I don't even know.
Yeah, somewhere in that neighborhood. So it shouldn't be too much longer. You'll be there, but you probably need to sleep on the plane and get a little sleep back in the hotel before tonight.
Well, there won't be much time. I've already lost my wireless earbuds between getting off of the plane.
Oh no.
And now, and I'm like, where are my damn earbuds? And so I was sitting here while you were in break. I'm trying to order another pair online and have them hopefully shipped to me.
Yeah.
We'll see how good Prime does.
Amazon
in Puerto Rico. But yeah, how's the day gone?
Been great. Getting great. Had great conversations with Dylan Sinn and Kyle. They're talking a little bit of football and basketball, college and high school, of course, and talked a little about Plainfield's Noah Smith committing to DePaul and that commitment as well. But, one thing I wanted to bring up just to get your blood pressure up a little bit here while you're there in Fort Lauderdale. Heather Dench, is that how you pronounce her last name? Dench at ESPN?
Denich. An IU grad, by the way.
And an IU grad. I knew that.
But apparently she is not fond of IU for some reason, is the word.
She's not. Well, the reason I brought this up, she had a thing there where, one, she was trying to make the case that Penn State should be number one over Texas, blah, blah, blah. But they also did 32 teams that she predicts could make the college football playoffs. Indiana is not one of the 32 teams, but Arizona State is.
Attention seeker. He's an attention seeker. It's an attention.
Yeah,
that's an attention-seeking move. Is all that is.
Yeah, and the thing, and the other thing is some of the teams that she did have in there, like Kansas, Virginia Tech, Baylor, Texas Tech,
Virginia Tech. Give me a break, man.
Yeah, and UNLV, which they had a good year last year. Tulane. I mean, the reality of it is that, like you said there, in retrospect about her being an Indiana grad, but there's no way that was objectively thought out when you think about what occurred last year. And
it's not objectively thought out when you look to see what they have this year.
I know. I mean,
you've got to be beyond ignorant, or you're purposely doing it to get attention, because this will just, people are going to question, you're leaving Indiana out of your top 32. So, okay, whatever. Then, but at the end of the season, she's going to find out how wrong she was, because let's make sure that at the end of the season, go back and look at where all those teams finished, how close any of them were to actually making the CFP. Half of those teams, it's a joke.
Right. Well, I just don't understand and she was very negative last year when it came to Indiana making the college football playoffs. She get a 180 as she had been, had counted them for the better part of the, college ranking show. And then towards the end, she started really hard negatively objecting to their
Indiana has to beat somebody. Let's get that. Established. Yeah. Indiana has to beat somebody. Because I'm sick and tired of talking about this, and I don't have a dog in a fight, but I do get tired of just plum ignorance. I'm like, come on, man.
Yeah. That's why I brought it up.
I'm not saying they're going to make it, but you're going to tell me they don't have a shot. You're dumber than owls. You know what?
Well, I just wanted to get your blood pressure going since you didn't get any sleep. Make sure that you're awake and ready to take on the day. Heading down there to Puerto Rico, where it will be nice and warm down in the.
She had Nebraska on her list.
She did.
Another. Yeah. Woo. Wow. How many games in a row did they lose last year? 5. After Indiana put the big whooping beat down on Nebraska, they lost 5 straight games, barely made a bowl game. Barely. They won their last game of the season to eke out a bowl, to get into a bowl. But they're going to be better than Indiana this year. I forgot. Indiana's got 3 All-Americans on defense. How many teams in the United States has that?
Not many.
Do any? I know that there are teams with 3 returning All-Americans, but are there how many teams with 3 on defense alone? I'm not sure about that, but Bolton, I don't know. Let's see. Bolton says he got an email from Blake Hertman from Indianapolis Colts, and they have put up his Colts Hall of Fame banner at Lucas Oil Stadium, and he's got 2 VIP tickets to be at the Colts game next Saturday. So congratulations there, Fulton. We hope you have a great time at that game and enjoy that, man.
And a big game for Indianapolis coming up tomorrow in Baltimore after they have done a couple practices together. It has been announced that Anthony Richardson will start
I saw that
game. That game. Now, Daniel Jones will play, and then they'll flip it the next game that they play, which I think is against Green Bay. He'll have his opportunity to be the starter and go from there, as they are still in the evaluational phases with those 2. But from all reports and coming out of Colts camp, Anthony Richardson's done a pretty good job thus far in this competition, but who knows what will happen between now and then. And I don't want to be a negative Nelly, but he may tap out at some time as well. So that's one that gets my blood pressure up as well when you talk about him in that regard. Puerto Rico, Indiana basketball. It's got to be a good chance to see what they have got on the court these 3 ball games, especially against the Serbian national team, which will be a pretty good barometer for them. I talked to Dylan Sinn a little bit about that, as he was there as well at that open practice. I was talking about, it'll be nice to see if they have the defensive intensity and physicality that they've been lacking the last few years on a consistent basis, if that is something that is emphasized during these 3 games. Where's your thoughts lie with that aspect of their game going into these 3?
Well, I'm interested to see the offense, of course, but from what I saw at practice, I think their offense is going to be fun. They've got a ton of guys that can shoot the ball right now, so I don't think shooting is going to be a problem from the get-go. It's just going to be a matter of getting in sync with each other on offense, because they move fast. These guards move the ball fast. I've said that everything happens at warp speed, and that's going to take a minute to get that in sync. They haven't been together, but 2 months? So they're going to have to get that wound together. Now, the defense, as I keep saying, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. I'm not going to predict this or that because I don't know. They don't have a ton of depth and height at the 5, so I don't know what this the Serbian team has as well. So are they someone that can really stretch Indiana in that regards? We'll find out. How's Indiana going to play that? We'll find that out too if they do. So I'm looking forward to it, but I can't predict much of what we don't know. I learned those lessons, lessons before. So, but I think offensively, I think they're going to be fun. They're going to be a fun team. It's going to probably make up for some not lapses, but a lack of certain things that they have on defense right now at sometimes, but at other times it won't. So it's going to be a tough row. I mean, they're going to have to battle. They're going to have to play hard, game in, game out, when they get to the real games. And by real games, I mean games against tougher teams. So it's going to be interesting to see how many of those teams can they really stretch and just put it on them offensively and allow that to make the other teams kind of go uphill a lot more often.
Yeah, no question. But we're going to take one more break here, and then we'll get you back on the other side, all here on the Indiana Sports Beat Radio. We'll be back right after this.
Andy Moore Honda is Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer for a reason. Buy a new Honda and get a 3-month break from car payments. That's right, no payments for 90 days. That includes the all-new, all-electric Honda Prologue, and you get it for just 0.9% financing. Or the 2024 Honda Ridgeline Black Edition or the Honda Accord LX, both for just 1.9% financing. Get more to your door from AndyMooreHonda.com, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer and your best place for new and used vehicles. If you're looking for a new home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore from Brick and Ivy Realty. Cheryl Sizemore has over 2 decades of experience, and that could be the difference in getting the home you want in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl at CherylSizemooreSells@gmail.com or 317-701-0838. That's 317-701-0838. Let Cheryl Sizemore sell or find your new home today. Located on 325 acres in beautiful Brown County, Indiana, Hard Truth Distilling Company is the biggest and the best craft distillery around. While Hard Truth is already known for producing internationally awarded whiskeys and spirits like Hard Truth Sour Mash Bourbons, Sweet Mash, and Hard Road Ryes, as well as their cinnamon vodka and the always popular toasted coconut rum. Hard Truth Distillery offers so much more. With a full-service restaurant, ATV, and distillery tours, as well as live music, you can spend an entire day at Hard Truth Distillery while making your entire family or group happy. And that's the Hard Truth. Hard Truth products are available across Indiana, as well as many other states. So no matter where you shop, if they don't carry your favorite Hard Truth product, tell them you want the truth, the Hard Truth. Hard Truth Distilling Company encourages you to enjoy all of their products responsibly and to never drink and drive.
Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle. I'm the Coach Shannon Griffith, and joining us is Mr. Jim Coyle from an airport in Florida. Coming to an airport near you. That's right. Making his journey to Puerto Rico for Indiana basketball. And remember, there is no broadcast or stream or anything of that nature. So you'll want to stay in touch with not only Jim, but the Hoosier.com will have you covered for all of Indiana's games there in Puerto Rico. And should be a great time and a great opportunity for Indiana. And more importantly, a chance for Coach D to get his barometer on his ball club. Even though it's just 3 games, it'll be a big opportunity for them to get a chance to see a guy like Trent Sicily. You know, the young man has been impressive thus far from all accounts. How do you see that young man's utilization this year at Indiana as it pertains to rotational aspects?
Well, he's been working really, really hard, like everybody has, but he's had to work a little harder because he is a freshman. He's got zero collegiate experience, but he's put on weight. He looks good. It's going to take him a minute, but I definitely will expect to see him play. There's no doubt about that. And I wouldn't be surprised if he is a contributor to these games, not just someone who comes in and plays minutes. Now, I don't think that we'll see Alexa Ristic. He got to the team a little late, and I don't know, but you never know. They may try to run him out there. I don't think that they will, just because of being so far behind with the offense that and the defense for that matter. That wouldn't be fair to him. I mean, that's like running somebody out to it's like watching Rudy and he says, just stay in. What do I do? It's like, what do I do? Stay in. You can't do that, man. When everything is going at that speed. So no, it wouldn't be fair to him, but it would be cool to see him. But we will definitely see Trent Sisley and everybody else that is healthy on the team. That's another thing. There's some guys that are dinged up and that won't be able to play. So there will be other guys that get more minutes because of this. So it's, what is a loss to a couple of guys is a gain to a couple of others. So it's going to be interesting. I know it's going to be fun for those guys to be able to get out and play against somebody other than themselves. They're no doubt they're going to love every bit of that, because you get sick and tired of playing against the same people, day in, day out. You kind of, it's not, I'm not going to say it's not a challenge, but you start to learn how to cheat in certain ways, I guess, because you get to know certain guys. But I don't know, man. As quickly as they move, there's not a lot of cheating. I am just so anxious to see if they can run this offense right now against other teams that are practiced, that have been together. This Serbian team has been together for a while. Yeah. This is old hat to them. So don't you worry about that, Fred. There's going to be some cigars coming back, brother. Let me tell you, and will be some cigars smoked down here. Cubanos.
That's
Cubanos. Right. Cubanos. No doubt about that.
Now,
it's going to be hard work, but I'm going to get some cigars.
I know that there's been some questions in the chat this morning about why there is no broadcast, stream, radio, all the above. I was guessing in my response that it may have to do with some NCAA rules on exhibition games and things of that nature. And then, of course, there's always logistics that go into all this.
I think that's more up, but I'm not going to say that what you're saying doesn't have some play in it. I don't know every stinking rule that goes with that. So there but that's not been anything that has popped up when I've asked. It's mainly been logistics and to be honest with you, as early as it is with this team, I don't know that Darren DeVries wants this being broadcast everywhere and people
exactly.
going, well, they suck. Well, they're this, that, they can't play defense right now. Well, you know what? It's still early. It is still early, man. So there may be a little of that they just didn't want it out there, and I would get that. I would understand that, but I mean, you're not going to see a lot to begin with, to be honest with you, as far as being able to use that as another coach. This is not what Indiana's going to be a month from now. This is not what Indiana's going to be 2 months from now or 3 months from now. So if you're playing them in 3 months from now in the Big Ten, having film on them from today is not going to do you much good, to be honest with you. I mean, you may get an understanding of how many shooters they have or something like that, but we'll see.
Well, the excitement is there, and we all can appreciate that aspect of being able to get your eyes on them for their first, true test of the year in that some respects in these exhibition games. But again, logistics, and I do think there are some NCAA rules that may go into that decision as well. But don't take me saying that as the absolute gospel. I will fall to the logistics aspect of it more so than the NCAA. One thing on 3 today that I was reading before coming on, 23 Power 4 GMs back collective bargaining in a closed-door meeting with athletes.org. And athletes.org is an organization for players to join, parents to join. Brian Copeland is one of those involved with it, former, I believe, New York Jet, but he was a linebacker in the league for a while. Him and another gentleman have organized that, but it sounds as if they're trying to be the representation of college football athletes in these Power 4 leagues to discuss and have a collective bargaining aspect to the equation. And I found the title funny because it talked about GMs at the Power 4 leagues like it's the NFL, but I guess it is now. Thoughts on that from your perspective? I understand it probably does need to be something there so you have the players' views being heard on all fronts, but is that something you see coming down the line as well?
Well, that's the question again.
No, well, the headline is that a lot of 23 Power 4 GMs and this athletes.org met in a private session, and they are backing this athletes.org for being a collective bargaining representative of college football athletes.
Yeah, and see, that is a slippery slope, because once you start going down that, then how do you stay away from athletes being employees?
Right.
If you have a collective bargaining, what are you bargaining?
Mm-hmm.
Payroll. It's already wonky as it is. It's going to take legislation.
Mm-hmm.
Period. Legislation to say yes or no. They're not employees. I don't know how that's going to come out, how that'll work out, but it will require legislation one way or the other to determine that. And then, because you can't sue a law. If it's a law, it's the law.
Yeah, right.
A judge cannot decide that, well, that law's not right. Well, tough. It's a law. They can have opinions on things, but so I that's just a slippery slope. But I don't see how they stay, because NIL is still not settled.
Yeah.
Everybody, I don't know why, because I laughed when I heard this, but everybody thought that rev share was going to solve NIL. I'm like, how you figure that? NIL's not going away unless you outlaw it. You can't outlaw it because it's against the law to prevent people from making money.
Right.
That's how this whole thing got started to begin with. And so NIL's not going to go away. Then they try to put in has to go over, be run through all these, what do they call it? The
College Sports Commission.
Yeah. Run through that. Well, they're like, well, you can't tell me what I can do and how much I can make and how much I can't. Boy, that didn't last long, and they sure backtracked on that. So It's going to be, we've seen nothing but backtracking and lawsuits for 3 solid years now. I don't see that slowing down until there is flat out legislation. And I'm not saying this because I don't do politics on here, and I'm not saying it because I'm supportive either way. But the one thing, the current president has engaged in sports multiple times, and good, bad, or their other, if he can actually get something going or something that heads in that direction, that might be better for college as long as it is done the correct way. But we'll have to wait and see. But it's going to require legislation. Otherwise, there's going to be continued lawsuits. There's going to be continued fighting.
Yeah.
Everybody has got their hand out. And I mean everybody. I mean, the coaches have had their hands out for a long time. You know, they're making, so many of them are making $10 million a year now. So it's not going to change.
Not going to change. No.
Not going to change. Not until it's forced to change.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely a money business. And finally came out and said the dirty word openly, since it wasn't really spoken of that way or how it has been in the past. But correct, it's going to take some type of legislation. I know there's a executive order that is out there. I do not know how or what will be enforceable.
But I don't think executive orders are not laws.
No, and there's a question on if they're enforceable. And I read another article today on how they could become enforceable with the federal government deciding to withhold funding from these state-run institutions.
That doesn't make it a law. That just makes it blackmail.
Well, right.
Which is against the law.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in today's world, I'm not sure it doesn't work in some respects, but we'll get there somehow, some way. Like I said, there's going to be some bumps along the way before they get everything dialed in on this equation and stuff. But let's move on to bigger and brighter things as it pertains to college football. Indiana had their practice yesterday, and from all practical purposes in the stadium, it again, another day that they felt like they have been stacking these practices up. And you've been to, I think, one thus far, but all the guys there at thehoosier.com have done a great job in coverage. They've had, synopsises of their, from their viewpoint of the practices and, of course, all the different interviews afterwards. But it sounds like this ball club is starting to be quoted, molded into the shape that reflects Coach Signetti's style of football and what he expects.
Oh, without question. I mean, I think that's already been set in stone. Any player that is there from last year, well, they're telling the guys that are new, this is how it is, and this is how it's going to be. And there's no getting around that. That is just simply how it is going to be with Coach Signetti, and it's how it should be. He knows what the hell he's doing. He's shown that. But it's not just him. He has trust in his coaches. He has trust in his coordinators. He has trust in his position coaches. He lets them do their job. He coaches, he works with them. He knows what's going on. He's the manager. He's the CEO, as he has stated, and he is. But he trusts his guys as he should, because he has a hell of a staff. I mean, he has put together a great staff, and that's part of the reason Indiana is doing so well. They have such a good coaching staff, and they have a staff that is being allowed to do their job, and they are doing their job very well. So that's going to continue. You just keep hoping you can hold on to those coaches as long as you can, because nothing lasts forever. But right now, Indiana is just pretty solid coaching staff. As a matter of fact, I've said this before a couple times here recently, that athletically, Indiana is in as good a position right now from a coaching standpoint at so many different sports. It's crazy. I mean, basketball, they haven't done anything yet. So while they haven't won anything yet, Darren DeVries has not won anything yet, that staff is a good staff. There's no doubt. These guys are great recruiters. And if you go and look at the Hoosier.com, how many top players in the country have Indiana in their final list of schools? It's a lot. And I'm talking about the top players, the number 2 player, the number 4 player, whatever. It just goes down the line. And now, are they going to get all those? No, but you don't have to. You get a couple, somebody else gets a couple, somebody else gets a couple. You get a car, I get a car, he gets a car. That's how it works. Yeah, that's how that works. But yeah, it's just going. Recruiting wise, I'm still. I don't want to be a negative Nancy, but I'm still a little. I don't understand why this year's team wasn't a little stronger. Now they could come out and make me look even more of an idiot than I make myself look like sometimes, but I'm not planning on that being the case. Because you look at a lot of other coaches and their first year was pretty good. Pat Kelsey at Louisville, Dusty May up in Michigan, Mark Pope at Kentucky. They were able to put together pretty good teams. And not that this isn't a good team in a lot of ways. I will find out over the next few days how good they can be, not are, but can be. And that's the most important thing. So 5 says they're always in the top 5 for 5-star guys. They got to start landing them. Well, yeah, but the difference between then and now, they're actually being recruited now. That's a major difference. I know 5's going to disagree with that, but these guys are being recruited by Kenny Johnson, by Drew Adams, by all of these coaches, Rod Clark, because they already had relationships with a lot of these guys. That gave Indiana a huge leg up by pulling that staff together. These coaches were already doing a great job elsewhere at other places, and they've been brought together to do it at Indiana, and I think it's going to work very, very well.
Well,
we got to hit the road, bro.
Yeah, that's just going to say we need to wrap things up. Want to thank everyone for joining us here today on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. May the rest of your day be a great one. And as we say here, we'll catch you next time, and we will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.